Hello, everybody. Welcome to Learning to Learn in Games. My name is Katie, and I'm a game designer and a mom to a child. And with me today, I have Phil. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Cameron. I work at the University of Michigan as an instructional designer at the Language Resource Center. And that means that I help teachers with new technology. And sometimes that's attaching PDFs to emails, and sometimes that is designing immersive 3D video games. I also DM a whole lot of games, and I've published like 2 things. So those are my game design credits. Thanks.
Awesome, awesome. So today we're going to explore the topic of how we could use games as a medium for learning and for expanding our knowledge. And I think this is a topic that's very personal to me because I hated school. But interestingly, school suited me well because I did well in that environment, but I could see how it did not serve other people. And I feel like with all the tools we have today, we have means of making it like a more of an engaging experience. And right now, I don't find it to be that way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that especially in remote environments, games can be a hugely motivating, a motivating candy or design philosophy for students. So I agree that there's a lot of space, and it's near and dear to my heart because I grew up playing video games, and I like design and I like community building, and I think that tabletop games in particular are really good at building community. So that's the most important part, I think, for me in classrooms. But so how are you doing it?
I am trying to figure out ways to help my daughter learn things through games, or really play. I guess the two are very similar, but there's something a little bit more structured about games, I guess. So most of my play with my daughter has been like just very like loose imagination, like oh like Pinkie Pie is doing this kind of stuff. But I find it. I've been like thinking about this a lot lately, and I'm like trying to figure out like the exact divide between like play and like work and study, because in the end, what exactly is the difference between like a trivia game and like a pop quiz?
Right.
Like what what do you think about that?
Yeah. So that's a good question, really.
Because like with my daughter, oh sorry,
Assessment.
oh sorry,
Assessment. I think. Go ahead. With your daughter, and may I ask how old your daughter is?
she's 4 right now, and
Okay.
she is a joy and very sassy, and I love her to bits. Um, when she was younger and she was like just learning to talk,
Mhm.
I had like some flashcards of like pictures and words on the back, and
Mhm.
like to me, I was like thinking like I'm not going to get my kid to sit still and look at this stuff and engage with it. Like it's flashcards. That's like the base level of like educational like how do you learn a thing, right? But like to my daughter, it like she was fascinated with it. She'd be like it was like a challenge for her. Like learn she picked up the words like pretty quickly. And then later I got like this scavenger hunt like game. It was like the same kind of thing, like these cardboard cards of just like find something fuzzy, and like there was something like engaging and exciting about that for her. And so like but it's just flashcards, right?
I mean, if at 4, I think if it engages your daughter, then that's excellent. And games are wonderful for sort of like having 2 goals, I think. And that's because there's there's the goal of the game, and then there's whatever mechanics teach you to do it, right? And so, speaking from like a parent perspective, like my son doesn't like math and he doesn't like being put on the spot. But if you ask him to roll stats for Dungeons and Dragons, he's like, at the time he was like 6 or 7, right? So if you ask him to roll stats and it's 46, take away the lowest and then add the 3 highest, like that's a chain of math. And he was so happy and would like just roll characters forever and ever and ever because that's what his dad does, I think. And like it's something we can do together. That wasn't schoolwork, and so that was engaging for him, but it's definitely how we learned addition and subtraction. So there's, like I said, like flashcards and like finding things, and then like fuzzy is a great sort of descriptor, and getting those words in, I think, is good. So
Yeah, that's like a very fascinating thing, right? Like games make us do these things that that like school kind of has to cram down our throats. But like you were just saying with Dungeons and Dragons, it's like you were like doing like some simple statistics. You are like reinforcing this foundation of like basic arithmetic, and like, but it's like engaging and it like catches your attention and you're developing those skills while you're playing those games. I I mean, this is very anecdotal, but I attribute a lot of my like logic, mathematical like skills to like all the games I played as a kid. Um,
sure,
so yeah, I think that's fascinating.
nice. Do you play any games that you like incorporate or modify for your kids, or are you still thinking, or what other spaces around the games are you interested in? I suppose. I'm
I've
curious.
been I've been trying to like I've been trying to introduce my kid to like board games, and that's like been a challenge for me because most games require like some level of like structure and rules. And when I pull out a game, I'm like, you roll the dice, and then when you get a 3, that's how far you move, sweetie. She just like grabs like the like owl figurine. It's like, ooh, hoot hoot hoot. And so like I haven't had much luck with like games like that, or like this hide and seek kind of game that's supposed to like help with like memory. But I have had a lot of luck with Hungry Hippos. And you might say that there's not a lot of like educational value in a game where all you're doing is mashing like a lever to grab apples, but it is sort of developing her sense of like it is introducing just a little bit of structure, and a little bit of like the idea of like rules and such. And I'm hoping that will be a foundation to get her into other games.
Yeah, Hungry Hippos. You could modify it so that you each start with one hippo, and then the loser gets another hippo, right? Because there's 4 total, I think. So you could do it that way, and then have rounds, and then see who wins, and then add up the total apples.
Yeah,
As I thought.
yeah,
Yeah.
like it's at the very least getting her like used to like counting and stuff, and like
Mhm.
and she's going like, you have 2, I have 1, like stuff like that. So like all these different ways of play, all these different ways of engaging, and like so I've been like reading some things that are like, what like the difference between play and work is that like play, there's no like set like productive end goal. Like when you sit down to play like Dungeons and Dragons, you're not like, by the end of this we're going to know calculus. Like it's like we're just gonna have a good time. That's the only goal.
That would be so. I'd like to muddy that a little bit, because many groups do sit down to Dungeons and Dragons with different goals. It's just I don't think any like, and thus there are different levels, right? Because it might be that you do sit down and you're like, okay, we're going to do the math, but then like other groups will be like, we gotta finish the dungeon, And so that's the goal, right? And your meta goal, you're completely right, is like you sit down to have fun. And then to have fun, it's picking up the story that you were experiencing with your friends. And so those mechanics then sort of lead you onto the other set of goals, right? So there's is it Voigot, I think, is a learning theory that says like you can start here and then there's a little bit of scaffolding and you just slowly build on top of things until you're quickly adding, 10d6 because you're through a fireball at a room full of goblins or whatever. And that's fun, and so you then you reach the goal of having a good time.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's like the goal is like self-made, right? Like it's not imposed by somebody else. Like you come in with your own goals, and so you're invested because it's something that you care about. And I feel like this is what makes it so nebulous to me, is because what's a game to one person is like a chore to like another person. Like I personally love escape rooms, and those are like a huge like font of like learning experiences, right? Like you have to like find patterns, you have to think outside the box. It helps boost your creativity and your imagination. And like when I go into one, I'm like engaged all the way, and my mind's like racing, but then like I like bring like a friend that's like not really into puzzles but it's just coming to be social, and they're like, I'll read this thing for you.
This card says these words. Yeah. I have done I'm 50% with my escape rooms. I've done one and failed terribly, and then we actually beat one by like 3 minutes, and that was pretty good. So yeah. What was where have I done them? Champaign, Illinois, that was an escape room. I was there for work. Do you have many escape rooms local to you, or do you go when you travel, or do you make them in your house? Like what?
I should totally make one in my house. I live in Los Angeles, so I have like, I'm blessed with having access to lots of escape rooms and things to do, or at least I used to. Well, things are
Having
starting to open.
Sort of. Oh yeah, and the rest of the world.
yeah, a lot of things have kind of locked me down, but someday I will be back out there and I'll be doing all the escape rooms.
Yes, excellent. Nice. What was your favorite escape room?
I think one of my favorites might have been, I don't remember the name of it, but it was like it actually split everybody up into, it took like a group of 8 and split them up into 4 groups, and so we had to like coordinate how we solved our puzzles. Like sometimes like we'd end up on one side and they'd end up on the other side, and we'd have to figure out how to open the door between us and things like that. And that one I thought was very interesting. I'm obsessed with like the idea of perspective.
Okay.
And so like so that escape room kind of really played around a lot with that idea of like how do you communicate like effectively to like other people. Like how is your unique perspective on a problem going to help solve like a problem that somebody else has a completely different perspective of. And so yeah, I think that one was probably my favorite.
Yeah, small groups is very clever. All of my escape rooms have been like just whatever group you go in is what you deal with. And 4 can be a tangled web for sure.
Oh yeah. By the end of that escape room, like all 8 people had like coalesced into one group, and it was a little chaotic, like trying, because like we had to like backtrack into previous room to find clues to like compile to solve like layer puzzles. So like we're like racing around the like the building, and
very cool.
People are like shouting like, I found something over here. So let's see, I'm feeling like we're drifting off topic a little. I'm going to try to bring us back with like the idea of gamification and this like notion that we could like layer games over like existing infrastructure to make it engaging and I guess how effective of a tool that is.
So
do you have?
I could talk about an example I have. Hello, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know that there are a couple of questions if you want to field them, or we can wait until later when a natural pause comes. But I just wanted to let you know that a couple of the audience members have posted questions.
All right, neat. I'd like to answer Katie's question about scaffolding or imposing games across existing structures. So I work primarily with language teachers that are teaching languages, right? And so games are perfect here because they put the students into a communicative mode where they have to discuss and learn and talk around things. And so one really successful game was a Hindi and Punjabi instructor customized a Fun Employed deck. So Fun Employed is like the +1 voting games, like Apples to Apples. And the goal of it is that there's a job or a position that the people are applying for. And so she customized it to be local to like a city in India, and then a job specific there. And so students had to use attributes based around the language that they were learning and craft an elevator pitch, like 30-second speech as to why they would be the best travel agent was the goal, right? So there was one student who had to listen and comprehend these 4 elevator pitches. And just like in Apples to Apples, you get a series of cards that you have to apply. And in Fun Employed, you make a story out of them. And so students would the goal is like 30 seconds to a full minute, sort of like quick production of the language, using pragmatic phrases, which are kind of like, and ums and ahs or whatever. And then in addition to that, the specific attributes that were also useful in other contexts for learning the language. And the students really liked it, because it was low stakes, like there's not technically a grade associated with it, and so that freed them. And then there was also this persona that they were creating. It was just like, oh, I'm not me, I'm the person who's going to be a tour guide in whatever city, right? So there was a lot of like safety, and that really enabled them to just like throw words at each other and try new structures safely. And I thought that was a great use of games, so I'm sharing it here with you all.
Yeah, I think that's very valuable. I want to expand on some of the things you said, but I also want to answer some of these questions that we have. Let's see, what would be the best way for us to do that?
So what I can do is read the questions that have been asked to you, and then you can respond to them, because people can't see me, but they can hear me right now.
Yeah.
So the first question from Nick Miser. Actually, I think all the questions are from Nick right now.
Thank you, Nick.
I think, he said, I think we learn at least as much through designing games as through playing games. What kinds of lessons has designing games taught you about learning?
Oh, I feel like I've learned so much through designing games. So much about like how to communicate and my mind's racing, but I don't have a very like coherent response to that.
Yeah. Designing games, step one, like the most important thing that I've learned is that you need to test yourself and play test just as much as possible. I was in a panel, or I watched a panel on Friday, and they were like, all of our students never play test. And so I'm now thinking about ways to get people playtesting their games as much as possible. Our what was her name? Jamila. There's a game designer out of the Southeast Asian area, and I'll put the link in the notes or somewhere in the chat. But like, they release games on itch, and they will release like 4 or 5 versions based on feedback and also just playing it constantly. And I think that's super important. Yes. So that's the main lesson that I've learned from designing games. And it applies to school too, right? Because when you practice more, and especially the metaphor in language classes is if you try to study, it's much like eating. So if you eat a little bit, like throughout the day, you're going to be way healthier than if you try to eat, 7 times 2,400 calories per day or whatever, like whatever the recommended calories are on Friday. Like that doesn't work. You're just not going to absorb it. So it's the same with playtesting and with studying. Do a little bit every day. And I'm looking up the name of that designer.
Yes, totally. Yeah. Like when I was just getting started, I was so obsessed with like just getting like something like polished and perfect, but like really like playtesting is the only way to make like the experience, like to communicate the experience that you want to communicate. Because like so much of art in general is just like conveying like concept that exists in your mind in a way that it gets to like your audience's mind in the same way, because like you could say a word, but like that word is going to get interpreted in a unique way depending on the individual and their lived experiences. So like when you formulate like a structured game environment and you present it to somebody, like you have like all this experience of this system and how like words work and like how math works, and then that just might not scan to somebody else. Like I think so much of my first project has just been trying to figure out how to get it to communicate, and it's taken like several months.
Do you want to talk a bit more about your project, or is it?
Oh yeah,
Cool.
sure, I'd love to. So like earlier I mentioned that I'm obsessed with like perspective, and the game I'm working on is is themed around Victorian courtship, and it's called Persuasion. It's inspired by Jane Austen's work, and the whole idea is that everybody is trying to court the other players and try to deduce what their cards are, and then simultaneously try to convince them to marry them. And so like I've been trying to design this game around the idea that you like don't have direct agency, which is kind of counterintuitive to most games, because players like having control and direct control and being able to make things happen. But in this game, you hand that control to somebody else. So trying to figure out a way to communicate that without players just being like, I can't do anything. It's been like a challenge.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. I like the setting too. It's very evocative.
Yeah, it's been gaining some traction. I've been hearing like there's like marrying Mr. Darcy, and there's like love letter, and I have feelings about that game, but I'm not going to go into them.
Yep, that is fine. Backing up just a little bit. Temporalhiccup.itch.io is the designer that I was thinking of earlier. Temporal, TEMPORAL, hiccup, HICCUP.itch.io. And they were really one of the first designers where I was like, oh, you can actually. They legitimized it for me. For some reason, it hadn't stuck until I saw the way that they were releasing their games. And now it's very important that I share that information, apparently.
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, just so you know, Nick also put a link to Knife Bunny Games.
Knife Bunny Games.
That's Katie's Persuasion game. Yes.
Nice. Okay, nice.
Yeah, that's right.
And also, there was one more question if you want it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. looping back to the escape room conversation earlier, Nick was wondering, what would an escape room focused on solving social dilemmas instead of puzzles look like?
I would love to know what social dilemmas you're trying to solve.
I imagine that if you want to have an escape room that's focused on like social issues, I imagine you would have to have actors, or either you would need actors that are like staging like a social dilemma, or you would have to create a social dilemma into the escape room. Sort of like that one I was mentioning earlier where the groups are separated. You might like create an escape room where you like sort of like model like the prisoner's dilemma or something. Like maybe you get to a point and then like the loudspeaker says like, due to your performance, only one of your groups is going to be able to make it out of the escape room, and see how the players like behave. Or I could totally imagine like, or like that one experiment, that one terrible experiment where like when presented with an authority figure, people would do terrible things. You could like, I think that's illegal. That seems like it should be illegal.
Yeah, like I don't know if you could pay. I'd be upset if I paid to have that experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do very much like the idea of hidden actors, though, right? Because one, then you're employing more people and actors, and two, both of my escape room experiences did have like mixed groups of people that knew and didn't know each other. And so you do have that getting to know you kind of experience. And so if you build it, you don't want to give it away, right? So I don't know how you advertise it safely, but I like the idea very much of like setting up internal conflicts within a group. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting ground there. Or maybe there's an escape room that's already done this, but it's like, it's so hard to like share those experiences. I really wish escape rooms were more accessible, because like right now it's like you have to spend a good amount of money and a good amount of time, and I just wish more experiences were more accessible in general.
Yeah. I've seen a few on like they're puzzle websites, but they're sort of framed as an escape room experience where you're given, so it's all in Google Forms, and so you can do it more advancedly, I suppose. Where like you're given a similar kinds of clues. That doesn't answer the question on social points though. So if Nick wants to give us an example of like the kind of dilemma he's thinking about, or sorry, they're thinking about. Give it like 30 seconds.
Yeah, so there's like a 25-second delay from when you said that to when they're going to hear it. So
Got it.
Once he hears it, he might rephrase the question or type something else in. But as of right now, that has not happened. So keep on discussing, and if something happens, I'll let you know.
All right, that sounds great. I didn't know there was such a delay. Sorry, this is my first time streaming.
Yeah.
Do you do much streaming, Katie? Or?
I used to actually.
Okay.
I used to stream pretty regularly.
Nice.
I used to stream when I played games. There's like, if you like go to my site and you check out my YouTube, there's like 80 something like recordings of me playing Ring Fit Adventure in like a bathroom. But
Awesome.
and then I started streaming my work on my games. And then lately I haven't been doing it as much, and I think it's because like when I started doing the streaming, it was like a way of motivating me. Like there's something very motivating about like it kind of forces me to focus, even though like I'm not like a popular streamer by any stretch of the imagination. At most I might have like one viewer, but just the idea that somebody could be watching me just like browse through Reddit instead of like working was like enough to motivate me to be like, I'm gonna get this done.
Yeah, audiences are an interesting part of a game too, right? Especially these days. And in a learning context, audience shifting, because that's what you're talking about, right? Like if it's just you, like you said, like you can browse Reddit for 20 minutes or half an hour or fall down a hole or in Reddit or whatever. But if there's a streamer there, or excuse me, a viewer there, like that, then you have to kind of explain why you're on Reddit at the very least. Yeah. Similarly, like, I wonder what it does. So, have you played the game 2 Rooms and a Boom?
I have not, but I literally bought it last week, and I'm like super excited to ever be in a situation where I can.
Yeah, it's cool because it's what's the phrase? It's information gap, right? Because one person has the manual to disarm a bomb, and then the other people have to describe what they're seeing, and so that's kind of like it plays with a similar kind of autonomy, or because the person that could just look at their manual and disarm the bomb can't. And I was wondering. Go ahead.
I apologize, but I think the game you're describing is Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes, which is also an amazing game.
Thank you. Yep. I am probably getting those mixed up. Thank you.
But those are no problem. I'm sorry. I apologize. I just
not at all. No. Anytime I'm wrong, please just be like, Phil. Stop.
Those are like both like amazing games for like completely different reasons. But like Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes is kind of like an escape room experience, right? But like it's playing with that whole idea of like communication again. Like one person has like the problem and is observing and all the information and has to communicate that to somebody that has like all the answers. And yeah, that's like a really good like exercise.
Could you explain 2 Rooms and a Boom then? Because I'm not familiar. I'm clearly not familiar with it.
2 Rooms and a Boom is this party game where you split the group, and this game is designed for like very large groups, like 10 something people, and you split the group into 2 teams. Like everybody's given like a hidden role, like you're the red team, the blue team, and one person on like, I forget, like the red team is like the president and one person on the blue team is the bomber. It's probably mixed up. It's probably the other way around. But the whole idea is that the red team wins if they get I'm sorry, let me explain a little bit more. So you have these 2 teams and they're kind of mixed up randomly, and you have 2 separate rooms. Like they're supposed to be like distinct rooms where you can't hear the other people in the other room. And the red team wins if at the end of the game, the bomber is in the same room as the president. And so it's this game where like I haven't actually played it. I'm just really excited to try it. But like there's a lot of like trying to figure out who is like who, and like who is safe to send to the other room, and like this. Yeah, I'm really excited to try it someday.
Yeah. Do you know who the president is at the beginning of the game, or is that sort of hidden? Or
I believe it's hidden. Like everybody has like a card with their identity, whether they're blue team or the president or what's not. Yeah. And so you could like, by the rules, you could like show that card to somebody. But like you might want to be careful about revealing that you're the president to the wrong person. Like they might like, then they'll be like look, it's this guy over here.
Right. Nice.
Okay.
And now I'm like, how does that tie into getting someone to marry you?
So Nick did elaborate a little bit on his earlier question about social dilemmas, if you want to hear that.
Yeah, let's pause on that.
Okay.
No. Yes.
So basically, I think what he was thinking of, like interpersonal challenges, which I think is something that Phil, you did end on when we were talking about the escape room things before, but maybe more like he's saying escape rooms don't usually have the participants take on characters, but you could do that.
Interesting.
Or you could have people say, well, you're stuck in a room and you can't do anything, you can't leave until everybody's worked out their personal baggage, but they abstract it by you not being you, but you being some other character or something like that.
Right. Interesting.
Oh yeah, that I could totally see that. I feel like that crosses into like tabletop RPG kind of territory.
Yep, I was
Like
just about. Go on.
yeah, like I could totally see like a game where you're asked to take on the role of a specific character that has like some particular issue going on. Like there's like this really great, really like immersive game. I think it's called Alice is Missing, or I think that's what it's called. And like you're asked to take on the role of like Alice's friends, and a lot of the game setup is like, what is something that you did to upset this player? What's something that like how are you, like why are you mad at this character and stuff like that.
Interesting. But
Yeah.
Alice is Dead Alice is Dead is a podcast. Alice is Missing is the game, and it's not a solo game, right? Like it is for multiple players.
Yes, it's
Okay.
for multiple players, and you're actually supposed to play it like I think you're actually not supposed to you're not supposed to talk at all. It's supposed to be played entirely on cell phones, texting each other, and that's what like lends itself towards this like immersive experience that you're like all your like Alice is missing, and you're trying to investigate like what's going on with her, and so like the only information you're getting is from like some cards that set the like theme and the mood, and the text messages you get from the other players, and the other players are going to be getting like information that's unique to them, and so like it lends itself to this like really dramatic kind of story. But I don't know how it might. I feel like role playing is like such a like excellent, interesting field for like exploring social stuff, and I think almost it's like almost and like a lot of queer people like myself like have explored like their like gender identity through like things like tabletop RPGs. So like I feel like there's a lot of like interesting like learning through play kind of like opportunities in that space. Yeah, like and if I could totally imagine like if you incorporate that into escape room, it would be sort of like a mini LARP. It would be like a one-shot LARP.
Nice. I like the ideas of one-shot LARPs and mini LARPs. Mini LARP is very, very interesting. Especially like if it's, because then if there are two ways to win, right? Like if you find the alien/imposter in your group of people trying to do the escape room, then you win. Or the group escapes itself. And then the alien wins if they don't escape, or some other win condition. That's very interesting. Yeah. And
Okay, I've got another question if you are ready for it.
I was if Katie could finish her thought, and then yes.
Okay, good. All right. Let me know when you want me to ask the question.
For sure.
Okay, I'm just going to this very random thought. I was just thinking it might be fun to have like an escape room where you are like the characters on Inside Out, like the various aspects of one person's psyche or something. Okay, go ahead and share the question, please.
Okay, sorry about that. Let's see. What about learning in a game is different from learning using other tools or systems? Can you talk about your experiences with the difference in how people engage when there's an element of play involved in the learning?
Yeah, like we sort of briefly touched on this earlier, this idea that like when you are playing versus like studying, there's like this level of engagement, and that could come from just like having like a personal like vested interest in doing it, and that's it's like an interesting topic to me because I was like bringing up that like dichotomy earlier of like what's the difference between a pop quiz and a trivia game, and like the difference is that sort of like that you're like willingly engaging it like yourself. You Phil was bringing this up earlier, like you were talking about how there was like you had like this learning environment where there weren't like exactly stakes, like, and there weren't like there wasn't there it was like a safe environment to play. And I feel like that is also like a huge contributing factor. Like when we play games, there's not like you're not going to get a failing grade that's going to impact your ability to get into the right college, which will impact your ability to get the right job. Like the stakes are not so high when you're playing like Hungry Hippos. You like have the freedom to learn and explore, and you are not so conscious of the risks at stake. Like if you don't grasp this concept in this game, you could try again. Like it's not the end of the world, and so you feel safer to explore, to try, experiment, and like and learn.
Yeah. And it's frustrating too, because like in so many educational models, there's not that room to fail, right? Like you said, the stakes are huge because if you don't do well on your test, then it dominoes. And the ironic thing that I notice is that when students do have just that little bit of extra wiggle room, the empowerment that they get, the sense of autonomy of like learning from their failure instead of just kind of freaking out, or having to move on to the next thing without any time to reflect on their failure, is frustrating, because being able to create that space in a learning environment really does empower and teach the student, often more than the memorize and regurgitate model, right? And so being able to incorporate games where these spaces are there, I think is pretty helpful. Like you said, like Hungry Hippos is like low stakes, but then like you can count, and it's muscle control and timing and like all of these other sort of like things you can think about. And in language learning, it's the same way. It's learning about one, interpersonal communication, but then also just like the ways to get at what you're trying to communicate in a different language, which is also game design. But
Yeah, like I feel like in that way games are a little bit more well, I guess it depends on the context, but like most of the time it's not like schools are like a very unrealistic environment, right, where you're like denied the resources to do your job, and you get one shot and then you're just told like you did it or you didn't. I mean, there are
the lack of space around that answer, right? I think kids would learn more if they didn't have to learn so much, is what's in my mind. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. And school, and the way school is structured is sort of like if you took like a very complicated board game and was just like you have to learn through this rule book, and you can't reference it again once you've gotten started. And you can't ask for clarification from the other players. Like so many people that I play with or that play test my games are like, I think I got the basics, but I need to learn as I play, because that's like how most of us learn. Like we learn by doing, by engaging, by having like life experiences, not by reading from a book. Like you could pick up a lot from a book, but it's going to stick better, and it's going to be you're going to be able to do better at it if you've actually experienced and done it, or like what games are sort of like a simulation of doing it.
Right. And that simulation is the important practice, so that when you get to do it for real, you've got that muscle memory, or you've learned that formula in math or whatever it is, right? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And it's those, I often so everything that I want to teach students is usually based around like building community. And so anytime you get to play a game with people, I'm sort of succeeding on that. but bringing it back to the title of our discussion, and like, what do you learn from playing a game, and how is that different? Right? That is, I just think, no, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
I would like to take this opportunity to bring up something that I really wanted to bring up today because it feels really relevant. Have you heard of this organization, this game company called Tilt Factor?
We'll look into it. Tilt Factor.
Yeah, tiltfactor.org is their website, but they do like amazing like games in this kind of space. They make games like to try to like make like a positive impact on the world. So like for example, they have like a game called Buffalo, and like it's like this game where you have like these two decks of cards. You draw one from each, and then it'll say something like African American on one card and doctor on the other, and all you have to do is name like one person that like fits those things, and that game is designed to help like unravel like these prejudices that we have in our minds of like there's like this really great ludology podcast about this. Like when
what's the name of that? Sorry.
The specific episode is called Buffalo. I'll have to find the exact episode number, but like it's a great one on this topic.
Yeah, thank you.
And like they talk about how like when you say like somebody's like a doctor, there's like a very specific like image that pops up in your imagination, and so like this game sort of like breaks like out of that. And they have like another one called Pox that was designed to help like combat the spread of misinformation regarding vaccines, which seems like very topical nowadays.
Indeed.
So like, yeah, I would very much like to recommend taking a look at their stuff. They've got so many interesting projects, and on their website they list like the reasons why like this project is important to them and things like that. Oh, it's like it's so topical for today's subject.
Yeah, nice. And that's it gets into educational games, right? Like as a space where like the goal is so Buffalo sounds like it's not quite an educational game. It's a game designed to educate. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on the difference there, maybe?
Yes. I think this is like one of the most fascinating points from that podcast. They were talking about how like when they were first like talking about pox, it was like about disease control, and like I think some publisher was like, can you make it about zombies? And like and they did like a research study on like the impact that it had on people, and people were more willing to pick up like ideas of like were more willing to like think about seriously about vaccination after playing the zombie version. Like something about like that fun disconnect, like when it hits too close to home, you almost like disengage, like oh, this is like an educational game. But like when it's like this kind of fun, silly, like oh, we're just having a good time kind of experience, it's like your mind is loosened and you're more receptive to like what's going on or something.
Yeah, and the concepts that win you the game, right? Probably, as opposed to like being told do this by an authoritarian figure. Like you figure out that, oh, if I vaccinate X of my people or however the game works, like then I win. Nice.
Yeah, like if you're being told like if you're presented with a game and it's like in this game you're going to learn how to like do calculus, then like some people are going to be like, oh, that does not sound like fun, and like go do something else.
Exactly, because like calculus is math, and like there might be people for which that's a game, but if the game is instead like physics based or whatever else, right? Like then they learn it accidentally. Or
Yeah.
they think it's accidental, at least. I think that's one of those weird spaces where, like, good game design isn't obvious to the player. So,
Yeah, trick people into learning.
exactly. Or at least, like, make it so interesting by the time they figure out they're learning, it's okay.
Yes, that's a very fascinating subject to me. Like, I'm very curious about that space.
What about it? Or, yeah, what about it?
I just
Like,
feel like there's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
to be more specific, is like, what about it is not a useful question, maybe. So, is it the design of tricking people into learning, or is it something else, I suppose?
I think it's the idea that we could create engaging experiences that help people expand like their worldview, or like develop social change, or like because like at a certain point people are almost sort of like, I'm not in school anymore, I'm done with learning. Like they might learn or pick up things like for hobbies or for work, but like you don't really think like, I need to study like up on my social biases, or my gender identity, or things like that. Like, so the idea of like sort of like, I guess, introducing lessons to people through like engaging fun mediums that sort of catch people at this time when they're not exactly in a space of like I need to do like some studying, like, but to still introduce those ideas to them.
Yeah. And that gets at the sort of, in strict game design terms, it's the themes versus the mechanics, right? And then the goal versus the story, I think.
Yeah, that meshing of like your narrative components and your mechanical components, and making sure that like that the story that you're playing matches the story that's being told, right?
Right. Yeah. How does that, so I wonder how your thoughts on like taking away autonomy or direct autonomy is. We don't have too much time, but I'd love to hear, if you don't mind sharing, your design thoughts on like the you called it the indirect autonomy for getting married in your Jane Austen game, or
Yeah, this idea of like indirect agency.
there we go.
Like,
Thank you.
yeah, so like because like to some extent like games are sort of like a power fantasy in a way. Like you're able to like, you're given like a problem and you're given the tools to solve it. Like that's like the nature of like most games. Like it's very rare that you're given a game where you're supposed to fail, although there are some and I love those. But I wanted to create I wanted to create a game, and my hope is that it increases like empathy and like this ability to like see things from another person's perspective, by putting you in a position where you're dependent on another player's actions to like make progress, and at the same time they're in the same position, they're dependent on you to make progress as well. And how to, and using that as a tool to get people to sort of look at things differently, I guess.
How many people do you imagine playing the game simultaneously, right? Like it does. It sounds like a 2-player game would be very different than a 3 to 5-player game in my mind.
Yeah, the game currently supports 3 to 8. I say 3 really reluctantly because it plays really weird at 3. But like most of my playtests have been around 4, and but I would love to see it play at 8. I don't know how that will happen, but I'm curious how it'll go.
Yeah. Is it it's a very like embodied and like in-person game. Then it sounds like.
I have it on Tabletop Simulator, and it's been playing pretty well on there. It's a mixed bag because I feel like it definitely benefits from all the like social like body language that you have when you're playing with people in real life. And then at the same time in Tabletop Simulator, there's lots of little like mechanical like conveniences that are there. Like one of the mechanics is that like I didn't want it to be a memory game, so you clip things onto cards that you've seen so you could ask to see them again later.
Nice.
And in person, it kind of forces you to ask that person, can they see that card again? And at first I was worried that this would be too much of a slog, but I kind of like that slight personal element. In Tabletop Simulator, you just peek at the card, and so that's kind of convenient, but you lose that like social element.
I was gonna say the inconvenience is actually kind of a useful skill to build, right? Like if you practice asking for something, then your indirect agency comes actually teaches you direct agency because you were practicing asking for things you need. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's been interesting to watch playtests of the game and watching like in real time people getting pressured into like suboptimal like moves and people like for social reasons making poor plays, and that's why I'm excited to see it grow and develop.
Yeah. Suboptimal plays is interesting because like talking about cards and suboptimal plays makes me think of like Magic the Gathering or like Hearthstone. And so like it sounds like you've designed a game that in order to win you need to make at least at some point suboptimal plays, which is really nice.
Yeah, like you're kind of you have to give away your cards at some point, or else nobody's going to accept a proposal from you, unless you just successfully peer pressure them, which I just saw happen today. So, I mean, everything is possible.
Exactly. Was that outside peer pressure, or was that within the confines of the game mechanics?
It was within the mechanics of the game. Like,
Nice.
one player had figured out that another player was a good match for them, and they suspected they weren't a good match for they suspected they weren't a match the other way around, and instead of revealing their cards, they just kind of kept proposing to them until they acquiesced, and it didn't work out for them.
Nice.
Okay, a couple minutes left, so if you would like to wrap up and remind everybody who you are and where they can reach you and interact with your work on social media and stuff like that, please feel free to do that, and then we'll wrap it up.
I retweet at LRC, like Language Resource Center, LRC_Phil, PHILL. That's me.
I'm Katie, and you could find all my social media and my Tabletop Simulator mods at knifebunny.com. That's like a knife and a bunny.com. You can find my Twitter, my Twitch, my like tabletop stuff. It's all on there.
I will follow you as soon as we leave here.
Excellent. Okay.